I love the way you guys talk. It's I could just listen to that all day. Um, I was asked to speak about Jesus being the good shepherd, the I am statement, I am the good shepherd out of John 10, which we just heard. Um, but yesterday, Brian kind of covered all of John 10. And I'm listening, going, man, what am I going to say? I thought, I'll go into chapter 9, give context. And then he goes into chapter 9, and scripture hog. And but I found a couple things that he missed, and I'm going to stretch those out for my time. I love chapter 9. Chapter 9 is one of my favorite miracles, the miracle of the blind man. That word in the Greek for blind means someone who can't see. Brian didn't cover that yesterday, and the word for parents could mean father or mother, No, but I love that story because it's such a simple story. I love the simplicity of John chapter 9 because here's a man born blind and suddenly he gets this sight. He's brought before the Pharisees and there's a boldness about this man. There's a sarcasm about this man where when they start questioning him, he goes, look, I don't even know what you guys are talking about. All I know is I was blind and I can see now. What more do you want to know from me? Why do you keep asking about this Jesus? Do you want to follow him also? I love that statement because here is a just absolute miracle. And he knew it was a miracle. His parents knew it was a miracle. The Pharisees knew it was a miracle. And yet they all reacted so differently. You have the blind man who had this boldness to the point where he got kicked out. He was thrown out, cast away by the Pharisees, kicked out of the temple, get out of the synagogue. We're done with you. Then you have the parents who knew it was a miracle, but they didn't want to stand for anything. They were still a little bit afraid. They were like, well, ask him. Ask him. They knew, but they were scared. And then there were the Pharisees who saw the same miracle, knew it was a miracle, and yet they got angry about it. They were furious about it. And it's interesting, we see these types of people every day, right? Those who know who Jesus is, and they're willing to stand for this, and they have the courage, and they'll be rejected. They'll do whatever they need to do. You have others that know of the Messiah and they're just kind of weighing their options. They're not ready to take that stand, willing to be rejected, even though they know the truth. And then there's others that they know the truth, but they just refuse to listen to it. And they'll reject it and they'll cast it away and they refuse, they suppress that type of truth. And you see that in John chapter 9. And I love, as Brian pointed out, Jesus goes and finds that blind man after he's been cast out. And he's looking at the blind man. Well, he's not blind anymore. Looking at the man and just saying, look, don't worry about them. The Pharisees are still there. It's that same scene right there. And he goes, you know what? I know they just cast you out, but don't worry about them. Don't worry about them. You know why? Because they're not really the shepherds. I'm the good shepherd. I'm the Messiah. I'm all that you need. Man, don't be bummed out that they cast you out. You know what you experience. You know who I am. I'm the good shepherd. And I'll lay down my life for you. See, those people, they kind of weaseled their way into their position. They didn't come in the right entry. They took that position for themselves. And they don't love you. They don't care for you. And their teaching will actually destroy you. He goes, but I'm the good shepherd. I'm going to enter by the gate. I came to my rightful place. And I love you. And I will die for you. And my words will actually give you life abundantly. And so it was a strong, strong statement that Jesus was making at that statement in front of the Pharisees, calling them false shepherds and saying that I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep know me. And as I was praying about what to share in regards to this point, to this group specifically, my first inclination was to talk about Jesus and his example as a shepherd, and have us as shepherds evaluate our lives in light of Christ, the perfect shepherd, the good shepherd. But as I examine the passage more, that's not really the point of this. And I also thought about this. You know, I'm a leader, and many of you are leaders. Almost all of you are leaders. And that means everywhere I go, I'm in charge. And I have so many responsibilities, because I'm a shepherd. That's what I do. So when I enter in a room, when I come on a Sunday morning and I see, visitors here, and no one talking to them, and I see, something wrong with the microphone or this, I'm fixing things. Why? Because I'm in charge. This is my flock. I've got to make this happen. And so there's a constant pressure where I'm always on taking care of the sheep, because I'm a shepherd and so are you. But the crazy thing about it, and sometimes I forget this, I'm also a sheep. And it's so rare that I just stop leading and for a moment just take my role as a sheep. I don't think about myself like this very often. I'm always in charge. I'm always making something happen. That's what God called us to do. But he also calls us to be his sheep. And I am terrible at this. And yet that's what this passage is about. Jesus gives this beautiful picture of, don't you understand? I'm your shepherd. I want to care for you. He's telling this man, look, don't worry about them. Those are the false shepherds. I'm your shepherd. And I'm going to take care of you. We're going to know each other. We're going to have a relationship. I'm going to love you. I'm going to die for you because I'm a good shepherd. Not like those hired men. Not like those hired hands. Not like those thieves and robbers. I've come to give you life. And as I prayed about this and I thought about this, I thought, I'm willing to bet many of you are in my shoes also, where you rarely enjoy just being a sheep. And what if we just had a morning where we just took our role as sheep? Think about that for a second. Just enjoy that, a restful following of the shepherd. Even at a conference like this, which is really designed for that in a lot of ways, where you don't have to lead. We still are just in this mode. We can't get out of it. Of striving. And then there's some good points to that where it's like, oh, no, I'm the shepherd. I'm going to become a better shepherd this week. I'm going to study and, I'm going to get better notes than yours, Just put your pens down, okay, this morning. I don't have anything profound to say. Just put your pens down. And let's just be sheep for a little bit. And let's remember words of David. The Lord's my shepherd. I don't want anything. Okay, let's just breathe for a moment. Right now, forget that you're a shepherd. And remember that you're a sheep. Not striving after anything. And the shepherd this morning says, I actually want to make you lay down in green pastures. I'm just going to put you by these still waters. Let's remember that it's not up to us. We don't fight the enemy, really. It's not really us who fights, but it's the shepherd who pours us a drink in front of our enemies and says, don't worry about them. I got you. I'm the good shepherd. You're a sheep. You weren't really designed to fight. I'll take care of you. I'm gonna just here. Look, your cup's overflowing. Just take a sip. Enjoy it. Why are you trying to fight? Why are you going grrr, Don't worry about it. I got it. I love that passage. Even if we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil. I thought when I was teaching Psalm 23 a while back, I thought about that specific part. I thought, okay, if I'm a sheep and Jesus, the Son of God, is literally my shepherd, I thought, you know what? I would actually enjoy walking into the valley of the shadow of death just to watch him fight. You know what I mean? I mean, if Jesus, because you know the valley, the shadow of death, that's where all the danger was. That's where all the, the villains and the people were going to jump you in this valley of shadow of death. But if Jesus is your shepherd, don't you kind of want to go there and go, God, I just want to see how you come through. I want to watch you fight. You're a good shepherd. And I just want us to soak this in today. I want to give you a little bit of background of John 10, this idea of the shepherd. And not that I know anything about shepherding, it's just what I read. You guys have a bunch of sheep laying around. I don't know a whole lot about this, but I did some reading. And but the way I understand is, okay, the shepherd, the one who knows the sheep and calls them by name and everything else, and he loves these sheep. He takes care of these sheep. But at night when he would go home, go to bed, there would be someone else who came, who was not the shepherd. He was just the hired hand. And what he would do, his whole job is just watch this gate, make sure no one comes in and steals these sheep. That's all I'm asking you to do. And just make sure nothing happens. And so in that scene, if someone wants to get to the sheep, they're going to have to sneak in some other way other than the gate. And it could be at night, when that hired hand's there, they'll sneak in the back way, actually slay a sheep, throw it over the fence, carry it off. But then in the morning, the shepherd would come back. And the watchman would go, oh, here's the shepherd. Let me open up the gate. Come on through. And then the shepherd would call out to the sheep, and the sheep would know his voice, and the sheep would follow him. They won't follow the stranger. They won't follow the guy that leapt in over the fence and try to talk them into following him. And that's what he's saying to this man. He goes, listen, you know my voice. You know that I'm the good shepherd. And those other guys, you weren't following them. You weren't following them. Something in you told you that's not it. That's not the real voice of him. And they snuck in this other way, but I came in the rightful way. I believe that this is a fulfillment of Ezekiel chapter 34. Remember in Ezekiel chapter 34, God says the same thing about the shepherds back then. And in Ezekiel 34, starting in verse 7, when the shepherds were not taking care of the people, God says to them, verse 7, Ezekiel 34, therefore you shepherds hear the word of the Lord. Well, let's go back. Ezekiel 34 in verse 1. The word of the Lord came to me, son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them, even to the shepherds, thus says the Lord God, shepherds of Israel, who've been feeding yourselves. Should not shepherds feed the sheep? You eat the fat, you clothe yourselves with wool, you slaughter the fat ones, you don't feed the sheep. The weak you haven't strengthened, the sick you have not healed, the injured you've not bound up. The strayed you have not brought back, the lost you have not sought. With force and harshness you ruled them. So they're scattered because there was no shepherd. They became food for all the wild beasts. My sheep were scattered. They wandered all over the mountains on every high hill. My sheep were scattered all over the face of the earth with none to search or seek for them. Therefore, you shepherds, hear the word of the Lord. As I live, declares the Lord God. Surely because my sheep have become a prey, and my sheep have become food for all the wild beasts, since there was no shepherd, and because my shepherds have not searched for my sheep. But my shepherds have fed themselves and have not fed my sheep. Therefore, you shepherds, hear the word of the Lord. Thus says the Lord God, behold, I am against the shepherds, and I will require my sheep at their hand and put a stop to their feeding of the sheep. No longer shall the shepherds feed themselves. I will rescue my sheep from their mouths, that they may not be food for them. For thus says the Lord God, behold, I myself will search for my sheep and will seek them out. As a shepherd seeks out his flock when he is among his sheep that have been scattered, so I will seek out my sheep. And then later in verse 22, he says, I will rescue my flock. They shall no longer be a prey. I will judge between sheep, and I will set over them one shepherd, my servant David, and he shall feed them. He shall feed them and be their shepherd, and I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David shall be prince among them. I am the Lord, I have spoken. He says that about his servant David. David, who lived way before that was written. Why? He was talking about the Messiah who was going to come. The son of David who was going to come. And he says, look, there's going to come a time when the real shepherd's going to come. And Jesus says, this is that time. That's why the watchman is going to open up the gate. This is what was prophesied. This is what's going to happen. That's why I opened your eyes. Don't worry about what everyone else says. You hear my voice. You wouldn't listen to those strangers. You ran away from them because you didn't recognize their voice, but you recognized mine. And I'm the good shepherd. I love that. I love that picture. And Jesus says about himself there in John 10, I'm the good shepherd, verse 11. The good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. I know you have preached the gospel so many times. You have talked about the cross so many times. But does it still thrill you? Does it still just blow your mind to think about the cross? I don't know about you, but I still get emotional thinking about it. I still have a hard time sometimes even grasping it. Like, are you kidding me? Can this really be true? I mean, I think about that scene in the garden where Jesus is preparing to lay his life down for his sheep, which comes shortly after this, and it's such a beautiful picture where he describes and he goes through exactly what he's talking about here, about how he's going to lay down his life for his friends. But it describes him in the garden collapsing. And he cries out and he says, my soul is sorrowful. My soul is grieved to the point of death. Think about this. The Son of God, the one who actually loves the sheep, who loves you so much. Here he is, God in all of his glory coming down, taking the form of a man. And at this point, he's just going, oh, I'm dying inside. My soul, it feels like I'm dying right now. I know what I'm about to face, and I just feel like I'm dying right now. My soul is burdened to the point of death. And he's getting ready to die. He's praying with his disciples. You know the story. In fact, let's turn there. I'm debating which gospel to go to. Let's go to Mark 14. Mark 14, verse 34. He said to them, my soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch. And going a little farther, he fell on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me. Yet not what I will, but what you will. See that? My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. And going a little bit further, he falls on the ground. And what is it he says? He says to his father, Father, if it's possible. God, is there any other way? Is it possible that you could remove this cup from me? And then in the very next verse, he goes, no, wait a second. He goes, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me. Okay, you've got the Son of God. Man, soak this in. Did you know that someone loves you that much? Not just someone, the one who created you, the one who's going to come back and judge the world, the one who's allowing us to breathe right now, loved you so much that he's in this garden and he's saying, look, you're God, you're the Father, you can do anything. He says, all things are possible for you. And I'm dying down here. I'm sweating drops of blood. You can do anything, so remove this cup from me. All things are possible to you. The Bible tells us that he prayed this 3 times. Okay, most of you are parents. Imagine your child coming to you. Men, imagine your child. Picture your favorite one, okay? Coming, we all have those, don't pretend. And but your child looks at you and just goes, I feel like I'm going to die right now. I am hurting so bad. I feel like I'm going to die right now. Imagine seeing your son or your daughter sweating drops of blood right now. Picture that on your face. Picture that in your mind right now. Your son, your daughter with blood on his or her face, sweating and going, Dad, get me out of this. You know you can get me out of this. Everything is possible for you. I feel like I'm going to die right now. Remove this from me. And 3 times your child comes to you and says, remove this from me. Man, who of you could sit there and watch that? And then he finally says to the Father, he goes, okay, but not my will, but yours be done. If it were up to me right now, remove it. You can do all things, remove it. But not my will, yours be done. And then the craziest thing is Isaiah 53, after, hear Jesus saying, not my will, but your will be done. In Isaiah 53, it says, it was the will of the Father to crush him. What? Your son is crying out. He's sweating drops of blood, saying, you can do anything, remove this cup from me. And God, Almighty God, says, it's my will. Actually, I see that. I love you with an eternal love. And yet it's my will to crush you. That you would be the guilt offering for these people right here. And Jesus says, you know what? No one's taking my life from me. I lay it down of my own accord. This is my choice. This is what I have authority to lay it down. I have authority to take it up again. I want to do the Father's will. This is what I want to do. I'm going to lay it down. When's the last time you just worshiped God for that? Okay, this is not about us and growing churches in the name of God. It's about us saying, you know what? Forget about my righteousness. I forget about my deeds. I don't want to be found in my righteousness. That's what I want. God, you're my shepherd. You laid down your life for me. You were sweating those drops of blood for me. You were nailed to that cross for me. Man, you're such a good shepherd. I don't even want anything. I don't have to worry about my enemies. I don't have to worry about walking through the valley of the shadow of death. I don't fear death anymore because you're a good shepherd. And you died for me. You laid down your life for me. Soak that in right now. We all have our different struggles in this room, right? We all have our different issues. For me, one of my biggest issues has been being able to rest and just be secure as one of his sheep. There's still, I'll just be honest with you, there's still this insecurity in me sometimes where I strive and I'm trying to earn something. I don't consciously do it. I know the gospel. I believe the gospel. There's just times where those areas where I'm prone to wander, and for me, it's wandering back into trying to show him my love somehow by doing more and being more pure, and rather than just resting in what he did on the cross and enjoying that and thanking him for it and just laying down and drinking from his cup and going, God, no one will ever love me like this. No one's ever going to love me like this. And my biggest failure as a shepherd is failing as a sheep. I just don't know how to be a sheep that well. And it affects me as a shepherd, and affects my people, and my insecurity and my lack of enjoyment of the cross spills over into them, and then I create these insecure sheep out there. And so this is important stuff where we just have to learn how to rest. And go, wow, Jesus, you are such a good shepherd. Man, you went through that for me. Thank you. And just to soak that in daily. I remember being in Israel one time with one of my professors. And we were in the garden, if that was really the one. I think there's 5 and you can choose. 15 tombs. But I think this was the one, or he was convinced. And I remember he was just sharing the garden story. Here's an older man who's been teaching New Testament words and works of Christ for years. And he started just sharing with us, his students, about the garden story. And he just started crying. And he just was like, he goes, what father could watch? And he just started bawling, and he goes, I'm sorry, guys. And he just walked out, and he just left us. And we're sitting there going, man, I just remember seeing that and going, man, here's a man who's been teaching this for decades, and he can't get over it. He can't just teach it. He can't just say, hey, yeah, and so he fell a few times. And, that technically the way that the sweat works and the blood gets mixed, he couldn't. He just started bawling, and he just had to walk away. And I remember seeing him that day as a student and going, God, I want to be like that the rest of my life. I hope I never just talk about your cross and talk about what Jesus did and exposit this and that and just walk off. I want to feel it. I want to know that, man, if I'm 80 years old and I'm still talking about the cross, I'm like, shut up, you did that for me. You seriously, you, the creator, with the angels screaming out your holiness, you watch your son, and you love me that much? Man, and I'm one of your sheep, you look down and you laid down your life for me? Man, I don't want to lose that. I don't care how many people I shepherd. I don't care how many people I lead. There's one good shepherd. He is a good shepherd, and he deserves all the glory. And I hope that you have not lost that love for what he did for you, and you in your insecurities. You don't just run around all the time, that you don't just sometimes rest and go, oh, that's right, you're really the shepherd. I've been taking myself way too seriously. I've been taking ministry way too seriously, like it was all up to me. That I am the shepherd and I'm going to be the greatest shepherd on earth. Jesus says, no, I'm the good shepherd. I laid down my life for you. You know, the Pharisees, they destroyed this. They were trying to destroy this man, weren't they? They were trying to do everything they could to keep him from worshiping Jesus, because that's what a bad shepherd, a false shepherd does. They weren't shepherds at all. They were thieves. And Jesus made it very clear. In verse 10, he says, the thief, they come for one reason. They just want to take something from you. And there's pastors who do that today, almost prey upon their sheep. They did in the Old Testament. The shepherds of Israel did the same thing. It happened in Jesus' day. It happens today. People, they're just trying to feed off of their sheep, take their money. And Jesus says, that's what thieves do. They come, to steal, kill, and destroy. That's what those people's words do too. It just destroys those who don't have a lot, and say, well, God's blessing must not be upon you then. And we had our brother praying for the persecuted church a little while ago. Persecuted church that loses everything, that has nothing. And the Pharisees would come along and say, see, God's not blessing you. That's what the false teaching does. You have nothing. You've been stripped of everything. You have no possessions. You've been ostracized from your family. You've been kicked out of the temple. God's hand must not be on you. That's a destructive teaching. It destroys. And Jesus says, that's not the teaching I came to bring. I came to bring you life, and life abundantly. Man, I think as a kid, when I first became a Christian in high school, I didn't understand the commands of God. I loved the cross. I loved that, but I hated the commands. It's like, well, I'll put up with that because I don't want to go to hell. That's just the mindset I think a lot of us have when we're younger. But then we start growing up and we start realizing, wow, like the scriptures say, his commands actually lead to life. It's actually been good to be married to one woman for 20 years. It's actually been good that she's been faithful to me and I've been faithful to her. That actually leads to life because I see what the other has led to. It's actually good to love other people. It actually is more blessed to give than to receive. This is crazy. When I was younger, I used to think, oh, okay, here, 10%, But you get older and you start realizing, wow, 10, 20, 30, I don't care. This is awesome. This is actually giving life to other people. And it just becomes this joy. And his commands actually leading to life. Man, I work in the inner city of San Francisco, and I see people who bought into the lies of the enemy, of the thief, that promises, take this drug. This will lead to life. Instead, it leads them to bondage. And all these things that the world teaches that supposedly were going to lead you to life really led them to death. And they're looking at Christ's commands and going, no, those things bring death. I'm going, no, they don't. He came that we might have life and have it to the full. That means now and forever. There's an already and not yet to that. It reminds me of 1 Timothy chapter 6. I love that phrase when he's talking to the rich. In 1 Timothy 6, verse 17, he says, as for the rich in this present age, that's us in this room, as for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty, nor to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. They are to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, thus storing up treasure for themselves as a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is truly life. Why is he giving this command and telling the rich, look, be rich in good deeds, share your stuff? Why? At the end, he explains so that you can take hold of the life that is truly life. There are thieves and robbers, and the world will teach you these things and promise life, but they're really destroying you. I'm giving you true life. And if you obey these things, I am not giving you these commands to destroy you. I want you to take hold of life that is truly life. And I think this is what drives some of us crazy. It's like we've experienced this life and we're trying to explain to other people, no, his commands are good and actually leads to life. This is actually why I don't want you to be so greedy and hold on to your stuff. Man, it's because it brings you life. In January, my wife and I celebrated our 20-year anniversary, and it's been an amazing, amazing ride for us. And, you know, as we were trying to think through, where do we want to go? Let's do something, our 20-year anniversary. You start thinking through, well, what's brought us life all these years? And you realize, gosh, it's those times when we got to serve other people, and you know, we're like, well, we can go to Hawaii, we can go to Sydney or wherever, but why don't we go to Ethiopia? Let's do something that's gonna matter, and we'll look back, and those have been our happiest times in life. Let's go to Ethiopia. So for our 20-year anniversary, let's go to Ethiopia. That's not like Francis is, you know, so godly. He went to Ethiopia. No, I'm after life. And this is the stuff that brings us life. I mean, for us to go there and to feed the poor, like people who are going to starve, and just to be a part of that. There was a ministry that I'd been supporting for a while, and I just wanted to make sure it was legit. You know, like, yeah, it's hard to trust anyone. It's like, are you really even over there? You know, so we went, and I wanted to go, and the reason why I've been supporting this ministry is the guy who leads it. I met this guy named Pat. Pat was a businessman. He's not a missionary. He's not a pastor. He's a businessman. And this businessman, he would go to the most dangerous places on earth, wherever. I mean, he would just go on his own dime. You know, so that's where I looked in their financials, and I go, no, this guy's not getting rich off of it. He's paying into this, and he's in charge of it, so I'm going to believe this and give to us. And he would just find people who we had to measure like their arms, you know, and they had to be small enough in order to feed them. He only fed those who were going to die within weeks, okay, because there just wasn't food for the rest of them. He was just trying to keep them alive. And so my wife and I went, and we got to do this and feed these children. I mean, thousands of them. But then we went to this area, the red light district there, and I've never seen something this awful. I've been a lot of places on the earth. I've never seen anything like this. I mean, it was just a pit. You know, men just urinating everywhere, just crowds of people, and there are these rooms, not really rooms, they were just barely big enough for a bed, and just stall after stall after stall of these women who were forced into this. They didn't have the money to survive any other way, who had to sleep with these men for $1 each. And they would have to sleep with about 5 men a night in order to pay their rent. Once they got behind in their rent, now they're indebted to these people. And so it just went on and on and on. And just looking at their faces and looking at them lined up in their doorways, where men walked into one, out the other, into another. And it's just like, wow, this is disgusting. Meanwhile, they have children everywhere. And their own children are under the beds while their moms are dealing with clients, and you're just going, this is awful, and we're inviting these women, you know, to this gathering we're going to have the next day, where it's just like, let us treat you like a woman for a day, let us just you know, give you a nice dinner, send you off with some money, and about 700 of these women show up the next day. And we feed them, and other women came up and shared their testimony up there. Women who had been rescued out of this, who my buddy Pat helped them get jobs, helped them get educated, and they're giving testimony about what Jesus had done. They're worshiping Jesus, talking about how Jesus turned their lives around. Man, and to see these women and listening. Hear my wife getting up and sharing testimony to these women. You talk about life. But the best part of this was I saw pictures of my buddy Pat. There were about 5 pictures of these women that had been rescued, that have jobs now, they're in love with the Lord, worship leaders, everything. And there were pictures of him walking these girls up the aisle on their wedding day. Okay, listen, I am not the jealous type. Like, I just think my life is the greatest life ever, But when I saw those pictures, man, was I jealous. Guys, imagine, just try to imagine if you had the opportunity to rescue a girl out of that, lead her to the Lord, help her get educated. Then one day she meets a man who's actually going to treat her like a woman and care for her. And she looks at you and says, will you walk me down the aisle? Because you're like the only dad I know. And you're walking this girl up the aisle and you're handing her over to this man who's going to care for her now. Man, can you imagine is there anything better you could do in this lifetime? See, stuff like that makes a Ferrari look boring. You see, that's why he says be rich in good deeds, because this is going to lead to a life that's really life. I didn't come to destroy. That's what the thieves do. I have come to bring you a life and that's abundant. I want you to experience a life that is truly life. And if you think that's great, wait till you see what I have in store for you, a hope that you can anchor your soul in. That when you taste and see this Lord is good, and you taste and you see this shepherd laid down his life for you, and his commands are actually leading you to life, and you go, man, and I haven't tasted anything yet. No eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind's conceived what the Lord's prepared for those who love him. But somehow these things are revealed to us by his Spirit, and somehow we know what's in store, and we're hoping for this. And I just got to say, gosh, are you experiencing that life today? Life that is truly life. I think that's one of the things that we lack in the church, at least in some churches, many that I've visited. I don't see this abundant life. And it's not necessarily the people's fault. A lot of times it's us. That because we haven't taken our role as sheep and really just enjoyed the cross, recognized and rested in Christ, and followed him as sheep that don't really need to worry about anything, don't need to be anxious about anything, but just need to experience his life. It's when we don't experience that life and rest in Christ that we're not going to pass it on to our people. And that's why this morning God is telling us, come on, stop taking yourself so seriously. This is not about you. I'm the good shepherd. I laid down my life for you, my sheep. And I'm just telling you, lay down in this green pasture right here. Take a sip of this water again. Remember that it's an honor. These commands I've given you, these people that I've asked you to lead, this is to bring you life. What else are you going to do? This is a pleasure. I was speaking at a pastor's conference years ago, and I remember the worship leader got up, and he looked at all these pastors, and he started to sing, and then he just stopped, and he goes, if the joy of the Lord is in you, someone needs to tell your face that. It was so classic. But I know what he was saying. It's like, I get it. Ministry can be a burden. Life can be difficult. I get beat up by these criticisms, and and sometimes we can get depressed looking at other people that are doing it better than us, and this and that and everything else, and it gets us to the point where we lose all of our life. And how are we supposed to be a light? How's an unbeliever supposed to walk in and go, I want to be like that guy? Unless we've been good sheep, and we've thanked him for the cross, and we just sat quietly and followed restfully. His burden, his yoke, it's so easy, it's so light, and his words lead me to life. But maybe thieves have broken in and told you you're not good enough, you're not shepherding well enough, and they're trying to destroy you. And just like Jesus came along that man who was kicked out, he says, no, you're good. You're good. I'm okay with you. And I'm the Messiah. I'm the good shepherd. Just follow me. Doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. Forget about those guys over there. I'm the good shepherd. I'm going to lay down my life for you. I'm going to lay down my life for you. I'm going to give you the words that are going to lead you to life, abundant life, now and forevermore. And let's rest in that this morning. Would you just bow your heads right now? And just think of that imagery again. Picture a shepherd and the sheep. And you are not the shepherd today. The Lord is your shepherd today. Just look to him as one of his sheep. As he just says, lay down for a second. Just lay down. Just drink from this cup. You're not going to find greater love than this.